We're doing Robert Brummett's book, Living Originally. He's got 10 tools to for personal transformation. Personal spiritual transformation sounds like a pretty great thing. So today's theme is love, and it's not love. It's kindness and compassion and goodwill. That's the word I was going for. Goodwill. Benevolence is actually the big title for it. But that's not a word we use much in our regular day-to-day life. Benevolence is from the root meaning, Latin, that means kindness and goodwill. And we're going to unpack that a little bit, because universal benevolence seems like a really good idea, right? Yeah. But in the next breath, you might be thinking, well, except for so-and-so. Maybe you all are much more enlightened than me, but I have moments. And so we have it when we see people who we care about, or people who seem similar to us. It's easy to act and think in kind ways, or easier to think and act in kind ways and do all of that. But we know that true personal spiritual transformation does not happen in the easy places. It happens in the harder to reach places. From the little things, like, so there's a person, and I'm not going to get involved in the story because I'm trying to be emotionally detached, but there's a person in my neighborhood who waters the grass, the sidewalk, and the bike lane. And I think that this is a hazard, because, like, if you were strolling down there with your stroller and the kids, so the choice is, like, to either get wet or, like, to go all the way out into the street to get around it. And I don't think that's very cool. Or the kids going down in the bike lane, Anyway. So there's little things like that about this person in my neighborhood who waters the bike lane. And then you have the world leaders, past and present, who may or may not have made choices that we agree with. So unless you're the Dalai Lama or the Pope, you probably have some more benevolence to practice. And, and who knows, they may do too, but they probably are better. They do seem to be better at it than your average person. So how do we do that? Well, it's very convenient that Robert in his book broke it down into some chunks for us. It's very helpful. And the first chunk is appreciation. Appreciation means to increase in value. Some of us may really appreciate when our investment fund reappreciates, right? That increases our value a bit. But noticing the value in each other and in ourselves also increases their perceived value. Interesting. Appreciation is value, but it means a lot of different things. So there's this great tool called Heart Math that helps us. Anybody heard of Heart Math? Ah, yes, of course Ladora has. She knows all the good stuff. So there's this great tool called Heart Math that helps us align ourselves, our minds, with our heart, because our hearts usually have a pretty good idea of what it needs to do, but sometimes our minds get in the way. Have you experienced that before? So we're going to do just a super quick, this is like Heart Math Light 101 in 2 seconds, not quite 2 seconds. So think about someone or something that you appreciate, like really appreciate. And it's tricky because sometimes people are complicated, because our relationships with people can sometimes be complicated. So maybe it's something like a really amazing moment with a sunset or a sunrise, or maybe it's your little pet, your little cat or your dog that just always brings you joy. Something you appreciate. That you can really have that feeling of appreciation that doesn't have any conditions. Like maybe your spouse, you really appreciate it, but sometimes they really annoy you. So pick something different. Pick something that you can have that kind of universal appreciation. And if you just take a moment to close your eyes if it feels comfortable, to maybe put your hand over your heart if it feels comfortable, to just feel that appreciation deep in your heart for that whatever has come to your mind, to feel that deep appreciation. And when you breathe into that appreciation, really feeling it in your heart, your mind and your heart become more coherent. And now you're doing heart math. Ah, thank you. This feels pretty good, right? So, that's one way for us to practice appreciation. And another way, of course, to practice appreciation, we think of like thank you letters, but instead of writing a thank you letter, which is sort of thank you for the da-da-da-da-da, but a deep appreciation, and maybe not even something you'd sent, but I really feel appreciation for this, and you let it be from a heart feeling, instead of just like, thank you for the dish set, that was really nice. I mean, that has a place too, but that's not that deep appreciation. You know the difference, right? Where you're really feeling that value increase in your heart. And of course, if you practice heart math, that centering technique we just did, right before you do whatever you do, you're going to be in a better place to express yourself. So when we practice that appreciation for the big, amazing things and the small, everyday things, I find if we practice appreciation for the small, everyday things, the big things seem easier to find. When we do this, we are primed, we're in that place to be more kind, to practice more kindness. And we may even take that extra moment for a genuine connection with someone who we share the world with. Sometimes we go through our world just so caught up in what we're doing, but to just really feel that connection with someone. And when we have a kind heart, we become more generous. That is, the generosity is the third step in this. And we find that in a variety of ways. And in this way, we exercise and build our spiritual tools of benevolence by appreciation, by increasing kindness, by generosity. And this is kindness and goodwill. That's what benevolence means, right? Kindness and goodwill for all. All. So we start where we are, right? So I have the person in my neighborhood is watering the sidewalk and the bike lane, and I think it's a hazard. So I need to either make the assumption that this person has not occurred to them that maybe they're creating a hazard for people going down the road. And so they don't, so I need to either assume that they don't have an idea, they're not doing it maliciously. They're probably not doing it maliciously. I know that, right? But I need to either get over it, or I need to go knock on their door with a kind heart and say, this is something that really concerns me. Instead of like putting a lot of energy into it, right? It's not that I put a lot of energy into it, but it's a great example. It's a little thing. But every time I drive by and I see it, I'm like, why are they doing that? I'm like, it's okay. So I really need to just like get over it and go knock on their door, or I need to get over it, or just not go that way. So that's kind of one of those things. We engage in our spiritual practice, we may notice little speed bumps. Because I'm driving along, I'm doing great, and then I'm like, at this person, right? And who I don't even know. And so I was like, oh, there's a speed bump in my spiritual practice. What could I do to make more peace? What's getting in the way of creating that peace? So it's not hard. I mean, this happens all the time. We have people and situations who get in the way of our personal peace. So this practice of universal benevolence, remembering that it applies to all. So we start with our neighborhood, like the little things that we can actually do something about, and then continue to spread it out. It's the goal. We're working towards. Because hatred and grudges never helped anybody, right? Because those people don't know that they annoy me. It's not hurting them. It's hurting me. So it's written that Jesus said in Matthew, "You have heard that it said, you should love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." It's easy to love your neighbor. It's not so easy to love those who you are perceiving as doing wrong towards you. That's a lot more work. That's where the good stuff happens though, right? The Buddha said the same thing. Hatred is never ended by hatred, but by love. Martin Luther King Jr. said, hatred cannot be driven out by hatred. Only love can do that. It's like they were all on the same truth wavelength there or something, right? Healing doesn't happen when we remain attached to the hurt. And when we remain attached to the hurt, it's harder for us to be kind. So we have to be ready to transcend and rise above. Now, this does not mean we put on blinders and ignore unhealthy behaviors by we'll just be kind and it'll be okay. That's not good, because that's not actually really being kind. You think it is in the moment, but it's not. Because for both the person who's doing the thing that's not healthy and the person who may be being harmed by that, it's creating it's perpetuating the problem. Kindness can be extended to those who cause harm, even when they are serving the consequences of their choices. That doesn't mean that you can't be kind, even when you're serving the consequences of whatever your choices are. When we spend our energy on condemning, why would we do that? It's a lot of waste of time. It's like all the time I'm wasting on my neighbor every time I drive by and they're watering the bike lane. It's a bunch of waste of time. So when we notice these things, it's trying to say, what am I leaving unhealed in me? What judgments, what behaviors of my own do I find troublesome, so much so that I need to splat that out on somebody else instead of saying, what's that in me? So when we choose kindness, compassion, generosity of spirit, we can move in the world in a more gentle way, but it's also a more powerful way that we get to move in our world, because we're walking in this power of truth. So we practice, right? It's practical Christianity. We're not just like talking about stuff. We're like actually going to do it, right? So let's start your day. Try starting your day with a heart math exercise, like what we just did. Really simple. Bring into the mind. I'm guessing that Sue's is going to think about her little puppies. Might be one of her things that she appreciates. I hear her talk with tenderness about her puppies so often. And let that be your touchstone, your reminder of the place that you want to come from appreciation. And then we commit to the intention of kindness, knowing that we will likely not always hit the mark. And it's okay. But we just realize, I could do that better, get back up, do it again, do it better, right? And in the spirit of kindness, we're open to these organic ways to express generosity in our lives. Generosity, yes, one of the ways that looks like is cold hard cash, but it looks a lot of other ways too. Generosity of spirit can show up in so many ways. And so, to close, I was driving down the road the other day, and I was listening to Science Friday, and they had Alan Alda on Science Friday, which doesn't seem to make sense, but he was on there and he was talking about compassion and empathy, which is something he's been training scientists to do so they can relate what they're trying to do in their science better. So they need some of those acting skills. So anyway, he was talking about practicing empathy, and sometimes that he has some hiccups along the way practicing empathy, but he was talking about how he came home late one night. It was like midnight, and there was a pile of dishes in the sink. And he was like, like many of us probably might want to be like, didn't see it, didn't happen, I'm going to bed, right? At least I've had that moment. And so, but he doesn't do that. He has that thought, and then he says, he turns into empathy, and he goes, what would my wife feel in the morning when she comes in and, you know, she sees the big pile because she, you know, she did all this stuff all through the day and made food and all these and he said the right thing to do, the kind thing to do in that moment was to just take care of it. So in the morning she could feel relaxed and not have that. So he used that empathy and kindness to connect to what she would be feeling in the morning and to make it better for him, better. And I was like, yeah, that's awesome. That is like the way to do it. You know, those little things are what makes the big difference in our world. I believe that kindness is the key to a more harmonious life and the world. Kindness is so simple, and there's so much to practice. Universal benevolence, everybody, everybody, everybody. But I invite you to join me.